Their roles are as diverse as the shows they perform in. While you may also recognize them from their TV or film work, these stage actors are some of the hardest working and busiest in the theater today. Hello, I'm Ted Chapin, chairman of the American Theater Wing, and joining us are Colman Domingo, Elizabeth Marvel, Michele Pawk, Daphne Rubin-Vega, and David Zayas. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to start by saying that as working actors, I assume you do jobs for a lot of different reasons, but certain jobs bring with them a kind of passion for what the job is. And I wanted to ask Colman, since the Scottsboro Boys is a show that you were with from the very beginning, yes?
Yeah.
And it's sort of a heartbreak because it opened this season, got a lot of extremely good feedback, but just couldn't find an audience. What was that like?
It was heartbreaking that it didn't find the audience that I think it truly deserves. It really is, I think, the kind of theater that I'm sure that most theater professionals and audience members will all say this is the kind of the theater that why we do theater. Because it really did challenge people and shake people to their core. And in movie, honestly, I think as an artist, I've been a performer for 18 years, and this is probably one of the most significant pieces of art that I've been a part of. Truly the thing that I feel like that changed me. Like I went in one way and I came out a whole other way, because it had to. It demanded you to step up and also not just be an artist, but to be an activist and to really believe in the art, truly believe in it, that you've been creating, because it was so provocative and challenging. Well,
when the first call came and you were told that this was going to have a minstrel show as part of the concept, that must have given you pause?
Actually, Sam, I'm crazy. Because I mean, if you know anything about me, like in the last few years, I've played nothing but crazy characters, like Passing Strange, and I played a crazy German performance artist. It's like so I'm used to playing pretty characters on the fringe. So I was excited by it actually, because the people that were behind it, I thought, wow, these are some super intelligent giants of the theater. Let me see what they're trying to mine out of this. And so I was excited when I read it, and I saw the passion behind it, and the point of it, and why it had to be, this racially charged incident had to be set up against this racially charged form of entertainment. Yeah. It was exciting, actually, for us to examine this, to examine our history as Americans, and to really look at ourselves and look at our history in this provocative way. And I think what other way to do it with a provocative piece of art. And I thought it was very cool. So I was excited. Yeah.
Any other characters on the edge that any of you played that you have a certain specific fondness for? Any crazy? Why does everybody look at David?
Everyone. Lesson, I think, is what was just said.
Yeah, you were saying. It's almost. Isn't that? That's the challenging thing, isn't it? To do certain things. I've played everything from a sadistic prison guard to a child molesting uncle to a.
Apparently many times.
But the one thing good about doing it in the theater is that you're not being edited. They're not in the editing room saying, okay, this is his sinister look. This is what he can say. You're in the theater. You're creating a character that you're creating, and you have control over that. And so it's always interesting. I mean. I don't know, regular characters now are kind of boring, but but it's not. There is no regular character.
I don't know what that
There's
is.
I always try to find something unique, something unpopular about the character that kind of drives me to try and make it human. And so that's always an interesting concept to me.
Elizabeth and Michele, you're both in off-Broadway shows that have gotten extremely well reviewed. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you. Just got a little bit to do with me and a lot to do with a lot of other people.
But how did it come about? Was it just a phone call, or did you audition?
No, neither. I did a reading of the play with some folks up at Lincoln Center while I was doing another play, which I try not to do ever. Readings anymore, but I did do this one because it interested me, and then they asked me if I would want to do it. That's how it happened.
Why no readings?
Well, because I've done them forever, and I don't really have that kind of time anymore. I'm glad I did them, and I think it's a younger person's responsibility. Honestly, now I'm a mom, and so if I'm not doing my job, I'm doing that job, which is extremely demanding. If not more so, I like to say, when I come to work, that's where I go to rest. That's the easy part of my day, because I get to sit
That's
down,
true.
you know, and all I have to do is think about myself while I'm at the theater. It's very simple.
I'm still stuck on you saying like because for me readings are like where you come in and watch something like get born and know how, well, not know, never know, but watch something get born. I don't know. I find coming in at something that's like after a reading, that's when somebody's fallen off or you have to audition, or there are the offers and stuff like that, but when you come in at a reading, you watch a collaborative, I don't know.
No, I hear you, and I think you're absolutely right, and I'm so...
It's a great luxury to say that.
It is.
I wish I were you.
Well, I just find, because like you guys, we're always working, and so on our one precious day off, or those few hours during the day before you go into that complete immersion zone that precedes going to the theater, where you begin to prepare for the performance, as we all do, and the preoccupation starts, and the playing out of the show begins in our minds. That's very precious time for me, if nothing else, to cook, do the laundry, clean the apartment. I just can't volunteer much anymore. I just, if I'm volunteering, it's at my kids' public school, so it's not out of lack of love of readings. It's just, like a lot of us at this table, I think we've been those go-to people that'll show up for a lot of those theaters for free, with no childcare.
Yes, that's right.
You know what I'm saying?
It costs money to do reading.
It costs, you're paying. To do
and
something.
Sometimes they're not only one-day events, it's a
They're
29-hour
workshops.
reading.
That's
which
right.
is,
For $50 or a Metro card.
babysitter every
Bless their
day,
hearts.
which,
For example, and I hear what you're saying, but like, it takes a lot of time
it's
off.
tricky.
But like, for example, Labyrinth Theater Company has this event called the Bond Series, which we do tons of readings for an audience, and we get, it's a packed house, because they get in for free. Because everybody's doing it for free, which is awesome. But under that structured way, under that structured environment, I enjoy doing the readings. Doing readings separately sometimes can take a lot of time, valuable time that you have to just deal with your life with. But under the one thing about Labyrinth Theater Company, they have that structure of the Bond series, which really brings in a lot of really, really good plays that not only are done for Labyrinth Theater Company, but other theater companies come in and see it. And if we're not doing it, other theater companies are interested. And with that, I'm excited with doing that at least once a year. And I know that's an allotted time that I can put to be a part of.
I want to talk a little bit about Labyrinth Theater Company since you talked about it. You've been a member since the very beginning, yes?
Since the very beginning,
And
yes.
how did it start? What's the idea behind it?
Well, I believe it was John Ortiz, Paul Calderon, Gary Perez, David Deblinger. They were all doing this, I think it was the New Jersey Playwrights Theater of New Jersey. And they got together on the bus on the way over there. They were saying, we should get together. At first it started as a Latino-based company. We should get together, just getting together and working as actors and trying to create some kind of camaraderie, some kind of bond that we can create, especially for Latino artists.
And do what we want to do.
We do what we want to do. At that time, there was A Death in the Maiden was on Broadway. And, it was Gene Hackman, Richard Dreyfuss, Glenn Close, fantastic actors. And there was a question brought out in the New York Times, I believe it was, that why aren't any of the cast Latino, because they're all Latino characters. And the response was, well, there are really no Latino actors in theater these days. So in reading that, they all got together. They were like, no, we're going to find them and get together. And when we started, they held auditions, and they picked about 13, 15 of us, and we started working out. And we realized that we did not want to create an environment where we're separate from the theater community, where it's going to be us. And we said, let's open it up, and let's have just people that kind of think like us, have the same vibe as us, regardless of what ethnicity they are. And we created the Labyrinth Theater Company, and it took about a year, and we started doing plays. And I mean, 90% of the plays I've been in has been through the Labyrinth Theater Company.
It's important when actors realize that there's a power that you guys have that sometimes the business doesn't seem to indicate you have it. So the idea of actually banding together and doing something that obviously you did it because you had a good idea, and look what's happened. I mean, Labyrinth is one of the most well-known theater companies these days.
Well, also that we write stuff for ourselves and for each other. I mean, for the world, but we represent because out there it's not that easy. They might, you know, we're still in this process of like we want to be all-inclusive and open-ended, but you know, we really do need white people to sell the show.
Right.
I mean, that's really what's going on. And so we're just, you know, I always say like the other brick in the wall that, you know, challenges them.
And Colman, you wrote your own show at one point and performed it.
Yeah, it was last season at the Vineyard Theater, actually. I wrote a show called A Boy and a Soul, and it's a solo show. It's actually going to have another life at the Intiman Theater next year, which is actually the end of this year. Cool, thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I wrote a show. It's about, you know, because once again, I thought it was a story that wasn't being told. It was a story about an inner city guy dealing with, coping with illnesses of his parents, and he revisiting his home, his childhood home in West Philadelphia. And just, it's all about his connection with soul music and how that connection is with his family. So, you know, the soundtracks of all of our lives, all that stuff. But also it was a love story. It's a love story about inner city West Philadelphia and the characters that I grew up with. And it's not about, you know, it's not about thugs and gang banging and, you know, crackheads or anything like that. It's about love, and it's about a family. And I think dealing with just issues of a neighborhood changing, of growing older, of becoming what I believe stepping truly into manhood when you're putting your parents in the ground. And so, so it's a love story, and it's also about the music that we were raised with, and hopefully it'll have another life in New York again, maybe by next year or so.
And it's the show that you created for yourself, so you can put it in the suitcase and take it anywhere you want.
Oh yeah, of course. No, but I created, you know, once again I created it just, it was just as an exercise. I was creating something because I thought, what can I do? This when I was bartending at the 55 bar in the West Village, you know, and I was writing this in like 2005 when I was dealing with all this stuff, and I was just creating it because I needed to do something when I wasn't working. You know, between 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning, when the bar was empty, I would sit there and I would write because I was like, I need to create something, you know, that I'd like to see, that I think should be a part of, you know, the stories that we see. Hopefully, it's something that, you know, we can see in commercial theater. So yeah, and I'm working on a new play right now too. That actually I just got accepted into Sundance, which is like, yeah. So I'm going to get some development with it. So I'm very excited. It's called Wild with Happy, and it's about death in Disney World.
Death and or death,
Death
in?
and.
Careful of the mouse. The mouse can be very confusing.
It's so inspiring, though, to hear that, because I started teaching this fall, and you know, these kids are coming out and they're about to cross, I'm in Staten Island at Wagner College, and they're about to cross the river over here to Manhattan, and I can't stress enough the idea that if it's not out there for you somewhere, create your own opportunities.
Yeah.
Tell your story, get out there, even if it's sitting in your living room and reading a play or singing at a bar, whatever it is, you know, just don't sit back and wait for the stuff to come to you, because it doesn't.
It
doesn't. It just won't.
I always tell my students too. I teach at the O'Neill as well, and the last thing that I always leave my students with is no one can tell you not to create. That's the one. We have a luxury and a liberty. You can create anywhere you are.
And there's no wrong way to do it.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Really
No rules.
No rules.
But if you do look outside, if you're waiting for someone to tell you or ask you, it will not happen.
Yes.
I mean, whenever a young actor
That's
comes to
right.
me and is like, should I? I'm like, well, if you're asking me,
Yes.
you shouldn't. Bless your heart, but you shouldn't.
Yeah.
You must only,
You have to own it, right?
you must
You
do it.
must.
There's no other
Yes.
option.
Right. Right.
If there is another option, you should take it.
You should take it.
You should
Absolutely.
take it. 'Cause this is just too
My
hard.
God, I wish there was another option.
It's a little easier, right? Exactly.
When I was a patrolman, I was a cop in New York City. In the early 90s, I used to carry...
When you were 5.
Although that doesn't sound any easier, I have to say.
Whenever I used to have this big shirt, and I leave in the back seat of the patrol car, and I used to get calls that you have an audition. I know you can't make it because you're working. I said, no.
I got my
told me
shirt.
where
I
it's
got my
at.
shirt.
And my partner
Let me
would
put
be
my
like,
siren on.
really, you want to? I said, I'm gonna put my shirt over my, and I'd go in. And so if there's a will, there's a way. You find a way to do it, and
Oh, that was
So great.
So being a cop doesn't sound like the normal way to start being an actor.
No, it wasn't. I mean, I was married young. I had 2 kids. I needed a job, and I just got out the service, and the police department called me, and I went in, and then I wasn't even thinking about acting. It was all in the back of my mind. It was like, if you can do something else, do it. I was doing something else until they just kept creeping up on me, and I said, you know, I have to make a choice here, and I did both for a long time until I couldn't do it anymore.
I bartended for like 1,000 years, and I remember, especially when I first moved here in New York, and I remember it was so humbling, you know, because you take these jobs. I was doing this job, my first job at MCC, called Bright Ideas, directed by John Rando, and it was this really cool, beautiful show, very interesting, funny. And you know, on a Tuesday night, usually, and people would wonder what the life of an actor was in New York. I would take my bow, really thunderous applause, wearing, you know, these expensive costumes, et cetera, and I would hop a cab and I would run so I wouldn't miss my shift at the 55 bar, so I can, you know, make my, because there was no way I could survive. And I still wondered. I'm like, how do people survive? I still wonder. How can you survive sometimes with these off-Broadway wages? I'm like, oh my, how do you do that? Well, and I would tell, you know, I would go and bartend at night after you receive this applause and this joy of your passion, and I would work till 4 in the morning. You know, hi, what can I get you? You know, exactly, and leave that totally behind. You know.
But you have the passion.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask Elizabeth, because I read in an interview, there was one performance that you saw in London that made you, like, that galvanized you.
Yes. I went and saw this production of A Touch of the Poet, the Eugene O'Neill play with Vanessa Redgrave, because tickets were cheaper than movies, and I didn't have a lot of money, and I was just bumming around London, and I was, you know, 20, I guess. And I was in the 4th row in a pretty small theater, and I saw her. She wasn't speaking. She was just standing there on stage, and she sort of brushed her hair, and it was like water. It was like this whole 50 years just passed across her face with nothing. It was just, and I've used this metaphor before, it was like watching Harry Houdini escape from a milk bottle. It was a magic trick. I was delighted. I was just so excited by this thing that had no real words. I didn't know what it was, but it became an obsession. I became absolutely fascinated, and I went back and saw her, and I just watched her. Not to say that the rest of the company wasn't beautiful, but I became obsessed, because she also, just the way she would just rub her feet. It sounds ridiculous, but it was just
She was
magic. Yeah, it was magical. And I had heard of Juilliard because I had a lot of friends who were musicians, and it was the school I went to was a feeder school for musicians. And I knew there were no academics, and I didn't like school. I did not like school. So I just auditioned. I didn't even prepare a Shakespeare piece. I was such a bozo when I did that audition. I have no idea what they were thinking letting me into that school, but they did. And as I said, I knew nothing. So I was a real go-to gal at Juilliard. I liked it because it was sort of like, you know, giant preschool. It was just all day.
Spoken like a mom.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. Isn't that how you describe it to your?
It's true.
Yeah.
You just get to play. You just play.
Mine's old enough to sort of
You play all
understand.
day.
Yeah.
And I think it also served me very well at Juilliard because it can be a very uptight scene, and I just didn't go in there with that. I knew nothing. Right. I was total tabula rasa. So I really liked it. I really liked it, and it's interesting because Michael Langham, who was the head of the program, who was my mentor, just died 2 days ago, and it's a great loss because his mind was like Milton. His understanding of Shakespeare was like breath. It was astonishing, and I was forged on his anvil, as it were, as an actor. He had a profound influence on me, and I just wanted to bring him into the room.
Okay. Michele, you went to one of the country's more prestigious musical theater training programs, right? How was that?
1912. The talkies were just about.
They were round the corner.
Yeah, any minute.
You're a
now.
mom, remember?
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, but that's
Making me younger.
but CCM
Yes,
is a serious
Cincinnati,
program.
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Did it train you did it train you properly?
This is going to sound terrible because I actually think it was a really amazing program all the way across the board. And we were given freedom to really do whatever we wanted. For instance, if we didn't get cast in something, we created our own opportunities and we wrote a live soap opera or whatever it was. You know, you could do whatever you wanted and we had support. But the greatest thing, I got to be honest, that I got from that, and I think this was a gift, I don't know if it was intentional, this is going to sound terrible, was that I learned how to save my ass.
That doesn't sound terrible.
It's not, but it was such a valuable thing to know how to do because they really left us alone. I mean, we were given kind of guidance and sort of structure and then left on our own. And so sometimes, in the real world, you get thrown into something and you think, hey, it's really pretty good. I'm okay. You
Yeah.
Go ahead over there. I'll be over here in the corner. I'll be all right. I didn't
See,
panic
that's
about
something
it.
Juilliard didn't do. It was the exact opposite. Hands, hands, hands on everything.
Ah, yeah,
And so
no.
you're suddenly like, what?
So
Oh, good. So
That's
it's not a
very
bad
interesting.
thing.
I
to
don't
say.
think
Oh, good.
so.
Oh, kind of
Get phone calls.
self-protective. Yes,
In
self-protective.
a way, and very nurturing and supportive, but also very freeing.
Yeah.
So.
Are you all singers?
No.
No.
I'm a reluctant singer. Somehow I've got roped into musicals and I have no training, no experience in musicals whatsoever. I really don't. I have no
I love
idea
it.
I'm playing Billy Flynn right now in Chicago. I have no
Oh, I
idea.
love
Yeah, but I have no idea how that happened. Like I have no idea. I have no.
Because you
Oh my
sing,
gosh!
you know.
Plus, you're such a great actor.
I
You're
have
going to be brilliant in that part.
I'm one of those people who've always been like game. I'm like, I used to be in the circus and stuff. I'm just like, anything anybody wants you to do, like you want to like do, climb on a high wire. Yeah, I'll do that. Let me try that.
Fantastic.
So I'm always game, and I'll always take in all the information about it. But then I'm trying to actually develop a stronger skill set to really sing. Usually I will learn something just for that show, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that was for that show. But now I'm just like, oh, I should learn that to continue.
You should write a Fox grant.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I'll
You should
do
write a
that.
grant.
Yeah,
So you can get money to
to do that.
singing lessons.
That sounds
Well,
great.
but not only that, to do that, pardon me, 8 times a week. I mean,
Yeah.
you, and that's you sing a few songs and
Yeah.
at least 3 or 4.
Yeah.
You kind of have to learn how to do it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
because when you get sick,
Yeah.
or you're
So I
not
learned from
100.
everyone. Yeah, I learned. I learned from everyone. I learned, especially
you. Good for
music
you.
director, and of course the company. And I've always I go into a room and I just ask lots of questions, and I'm trying to figure out what everyone else is doing and how do you support that? How do you get that note out? How do you do that? So I'm always asking those things. So it's interesting becoming a singer, a reluctant singer. Because I say reluctant because I had no intention of doing musicals ever. Ever. I never. I just.
Me either,
I thought it was something that other people did.
did.
Other people did that. Because they were trained and they knew that stuff. And I feel like, well, I'm an actor and I can hold a tune, but now I'm singing and dancing in musicals now. It's funny to me.
There's a nice quote. There's a nice quote here from one of our panelists that says, "You try to hit the notes and tell the truth." It's from an interview with you, Daphne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wanted to keep music and acting separate. It was like delegitimizing. In my mind, musical theater was kind of like a bastard stepchild. I wasn't really into it. And then Rent happened, and I don't want to say like, I got this role on a dare. Once I started learning more about, the show through readings. That's why I always have these like my favorite things have been, I've been in it since the beginning, it feels like. So that's why I called you on that girlfriend.
Yeah.
But you're totally right.
Yeah.
But the thing with Rent, it was originally a rock opera based on La Boheme. That's how it was being talked about. So I thought, well, rock opera, I like rock and roll, opera. My dad loves opera based on La Boheme. This will really be thrilling. This will put it on its ear, and you learn from people that are there, and your education and yours
Yes.
and yours and yours. It's like when you're in it and you're asking questions and you're green, that's how you learn.
Truly.
That's how you learn. You learn
Yes.
from the world. The world is where you learn, and the desire to learn.
I think part of your talent is, because I remember that time, we were actually doing a
Stupid.
production.
We didn't
were
know
actually
that.
doing a production of Death Watch, of John Janet's Death Watch for the Labyrinth.
That's
And Daphne was in it, and I remember I was producing it, and Daphne came up to me. She goes, "David, there's this other project that I want to do that I think is really special." And then she felt bad that she was leaving.
Right.
And I was like, go do your thing. And it was the workshop of Rent.
Yeah.
It's a good choice.
Yeah. But I did ask.
Daphne, since I want to talk a little bit about creating roles, and since you created the role in Rent, did you feel, obviously now it's easy to look back on it and say it must have been an incredibly special, extraordinary experience. Did you feel that in the way, did you feel its specialness, or did it just seem like a gig?
No. I felt its specialness. Even if none of what happened had happened, it would have been special. And I remember the first workshop before the workshop that became the thing.
That's clear, no, I got that.
There was a workshop prior to the workshop that went off onto Broadway, and you know, as someone who was there, like I just think, wow, Jonathan, if he had lived, everything would have been different. You know, like that's like really saying nothing. But
you had absolutely no inkling that he was sick or anything. It was just like,
no.
boom.
It was one day to the next. We thought he had food poisoning. Actually, we were like, you should have eaten with us, dumbass.
Right.
But I knew that if that's where it began and ended, that was one of the most amazing experiences in my life. And in my life, it was just, talk about getting galvanized. Those things are extremely rare.
And did you know that then?
I
Because you were
did.
very young.
I did know it.
What a gift that is.
That's
to know
why
that
we
at
had
that
the
age.
energy to do that crazy stuff 8 times a week.
Yeah, right.
You know, it was crazy stuff we did, like jumping on stuff and going
Straddling
backwards
that
and
railing up there.
and people like, it's a nice little thing.
I want to ask Michele, you had an experience of doing a Stephen Sondheim, Harold Prince show in which your role was written in at one step and then written out, right?
Cut.
Not because of anything you did, but what was it like?
I like to think it was because, you know, of course, no.
I'll tell you, having seen it in all its incarnations, I missed you when you were cut. But you did the
bless
Goodman
you.
Theater of the show Bounce. So
Yeah, I love it. It was funny. We got to the Goodman to work on it out of town, and we had this press event before we'd started rehearsals, which I always find interesting. That's when I'm going to learn the most about the play, I thought. And then so Steve talked about what he thought the play was and how he obtained the rights and what inspired him about the book, story of the 2 brothers and the mother, and then John Weidman, who wrote the book, talked about, you know, he came on board and he saw it was a socio-political story over the time. And then Hal Prince got on board and he's like, where's the dames? And so they wrote this character for me. And I literally think that was sort of his thing. I need some sex. I love him so much. And so I'm so lucky. It was how grateful. I was like a kid in a candy. I mean, it was like every musical theater girl's dream to be in that room every day. Oh,
Yeah.
could have.
it might have indicated that the collaborators weren't exactly seeing the same show, perhaps, which occasionally does happen.
Well, perhaps.
But I want to ask,
I still didn't care.
you were really good.
Oh, thank
and they
you.
gave your
That's
song to the gay
kind.
lover, I think, later in the second incarnation. We'll leave that one.
When that happened,
It is. Over and over again.
But David,
gay lover that gets it.
I wanted to ask, what's it like being on a television show where basically your character is being written around you? Do they seek your input? Do you get scripts some week and look at it and say, that's not me?
Well, no, I mean, I'm very fortunate in being in a show that from the first season, you know, because my character is not very prominent in the book, which is where a lot of these characters first, you know, started with Jim Manos, who wrote the pilot, and then when we did it. I think that as we go, I mean, I'm whether it's good or bad, I'm pretty specific. you know, and that's helped me and has hurt me in the past, but it's helped me mostly. And I think that voice helped the writers really kind of write, you know, kind of the way I speak and kind of write maybe a little bit of my personality. So I think they've done an amazing job in just creating this character from their own imagination, from knowing me, hopefully, and also with my relationship with everyone else in the cast. And so that doesn't happen often. And so I was pretty fortunate in being in a show that usually I have my imagination of where my character should go, and then I read the script and I go, no, this is much better. You know, and that doesn't happen all the time.
Wow.
But I'm actually read the script, okay, forget about what I was thinking. This actually works for my character, and it's really good. So I'm pretty fortunate that that's still happening with my character on the show.
Oh, good. So I want to take a step in the direction of collaboration and talk about directors. I mean, I guess part of it is a reference to covering your butt, learning about that. But Elizabeth, you had an interesting collaboration with a Dutch director.
Yes.
Which I was fascinated to read about. Tell us a little bit about that.
About Ivo van Hove.
Yeah. How did you meet him?
How did I meet him? I met him, a lot of my career, you know, I love when people ask, as I imagine you all have fielded this question, like, how do you make your decisions in your career and shape your career? And it's like, there's no shaping. It's just a flying leap at the wall on a daily basis, you know? And a lot of my career has been other people's cast-offs, and I'm so grateful for it. There was a production of Streetcar that Ivo was coming, and Cherry Jones was going to play Blanche, and she did something else, and I got her cast-offs. And so I didn't know Ivo, he didn't know me. Wow. We just I was told to learn the play, because you must arrive off book first day.
Is that right?
And that's how I work now. I learned and continue to learn so much from this man and his partner, Jan, who is the designer of all things, of the physical space, of the clothes, of the lights, all of it. They have taught me, and I hope it's mutual. So I showed up and we began to work, and we continue to work now. We just finished a collaboration, and I look forward to our next. What I realized working with him, it was a great liberation for me, because up until working with Ivo, I had a career built on what I could do. And after working with Ivo, I have a career built on learning about what I didn't know I could do. And that's what he gives me. When I go in the room, I have none of the things that we find or anything that I had a plan about, nothing, ever.
But you're off book.
But I'm off book and I'm game. And I will do, if I have a strength as a performer, and God knows I have many weaknesses, but if I have a strength, it's because I will say yes, always. I will always say yes, because I don't know why you'd ever say no, unless it's going to cause you severe physical injury, and I've sustained really severe physical injury, so even at that point, I don't say no. Because you don't know. How could you say no? Who's to say? It might panic, to try. It doesn't mean that I say yes by repeating it always, if that's something a director is really pushing for. If I disagree, I will, state my argument and we'll take it from there. But in the working, in the rehearsal period, I will try absolutely anything.
But
always.
Doesn't that show an incredible trust?
I don't know. I think maybe ultimately a trust of the experience of being alive, that there is, what is there to be afraid of, really? I mean, I don't want to live with shame. Not while I'm working, at least. Not while I'm working. I want to be free of shame. And really, that's the only thing that could motivate fear. So.
Well, I remember seeing that production, not even knowing what I was about to see. Just saying, oh,
or knowing what happened when you left.
I'm going to see a production of A Streetcar Named Desire. I've seen several productions of A Streetcar Named Desire. And I saw that, and immediately, the first minute of the play, I was like, okay, I need to open my mind. I need to not think about Streetcar Named Desire the way I've always read it or the way I've always seen it. I have to open my mind, and in opening my mind, I think it was a new way of trusting, because not only trust with you and the director, is a trust with the audience.
Absolutely.
That goes into that.
Absolutely.
And I was just mesmerized, and it really captured a lot of qualities in that play and in those performances that I didn't see in other performances because of the way it was directed. Yes, it was eccentric. Yes, it was different, but it was so passionate and it was so powerful. And God, I mean, it's just really amazing. Something that even as an actor, I would have gone, whoa, really? You want me to do it that way? But as an audience, and seeing it as an audience member, it opened me up also as an artist where, I don't say no that much, which sometimes is dangerous. I say yes a lot, you know, and so and that's the kind of production that it was. And so, I mean, it was amazing.
But you sound like an enlightened member of the audience. Some of you have done plays like that or productions like that that are somewhat controversial. What's it like being up on stage? Feeling not the warmth from the...
It's empowering.
It
It's
is
really
empowering.
empowering. I'm so used to people fleeing that it's awkward now that they're all staying. This is
And now
weird.
they seem to like it.
I did a play where I
They
take a
laugh and
nightstick.
I stand.
I take a nightstick and I bang it against the fence, and it's very powerful. And one night I remember it was just in Jesus Hopped the A Train, and I hit this nightstick against the fence, and it broke. And all I saw was a nightstick going towards an audience member. And we looked, and just then the audience member ducks, it hits the seat, and when he comes up like this.
He was in it.
He was so excited that he almost got killed.
Oh my God.
And so, I mean, that's the kind of, that
And
energy.
he knew it was an illusion.
And when I saw that, it got me even more. I was like,
Yeah.
it was
Because
really
it's something that I think audiences really forget. And it is a pact that we make as performers, that everyone in that room. I just saw Keith Jarrett perform at Carnegie Hall, and he actually left stage at one point. He was playing this unbelievable, because he improvises, everything is improvisation. And some of it's classical, and some of it's mind-blowing. You know, he played with Miles, he played with everybody, and he can play everything. And he was playing this very soft piece, and the coughing started, as happens when you get groups together, that it will become
tuberculosis.
a room of everyone will feel the need. And he put his head down and he left stage for about 15 minutes, and he returned. And very calmly, not angry at all, but he just explained, I was playing a soft piece, and to respect the integrity of the piece, my only choice was to play louder. And I wasn't going to do that to the music. And as a performer, I don't cough. I don't. I might need to, but I don't. So I need you to meet me with that concentration and that focus. Wow. And we will have this experience together.
Yeah.
Because what you do, when I'm on stage, I'm bat radar. I hear everything.
Yes.
Sure.
All of you do. Every single thing. You go, I hear it. I register it. Everything. And it doesn't mean that I'm distracted. It's just that it's all part of the experience. All the time. I don't think audiences are that conscious of that. They really think that checking their BlackBerry is no big thing.
Right.
Yeah.
They think it's okay.
Opening up some chips.
Right.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Just rereading that Peter Brook book. Have you ever read that, The Empty Spaces?
Yes.
Empty Space, excuse me, which I hadn't read in years. And I suppose I could now read it every year and get something new from it. But this last pass through, that's the large part what I took with the audience. You have a job to do when you come in. That is your opportunity, really. And that can differentiate between, deadly theater and holy theater, and it's true. It's really true.
The majority of people who come these days, do they understand that that's the agreement that they're making? I feel like most people don't know that that's the agreement that you're making.
Well,
that these
the
it's alive right
economics.
now, and your commitment is to be alive in this moment. And you have to be a part of this conversation.
because of the conditioning with the television
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
computer and
Yes.
and all the screens that we carry with our toys, and there is this numbing that has.
Absolutely.
But it's also this sort of passivity that, like, I can watch without being watched. That it's not interactive.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting because I'm flabbergasted by what you just said about what Keith Jarrett said. But I just I grew up. I used to be in a girl group, called Pajama Party, and we made records. And that was like one of the first things that like I could pay the rent performing. And we'd wear panty girdles and like pink lipstick and do like this. And we'd go to Queens and to the Bronx, and we played with Milli Vanilli, and there were like all these screaming kids. And I remember, and sometimes there were like shootouts. I think we probably crossed paths
in the Bronx,
before we
right?
did.
Yeah, you were walking your beat.
And I learned something very early on, which is that like my job is to do a show. It's not their job to entertain me. It's never the audience's job to make me feel comfortable. I remember going out there and like the boys would be like, and their girlfriends would be like, like, what do you have? Like, what? And I remember that part of my job, I felt, description, was to make people love me. And that's not your job as the observer. It's all on me. So like, now we're doing a show, and sometimes it's really quiet, and people are like, that audience sucks. And it's like, and then at the end they stand up, or they, or they're listening. They are listening. And but there's a difference. It's not like they're opening up their candy and they're like, they are listening.
Oh, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Completely agree with that, because I think that's such an actor trap, that if they don't
laugh at something.
then this is terrible. I completely agree.
Like, sometimes when you really take stuff in, you're
absolutely. I don't laugh out loud when I see really funny stuff. It's just not my response.
Right.
It's no measure of my.
And when people do laugh, to they give each other permission to be interactive, and sometimes that's wonderful. But not every clan, each audience is different.
Yes.
That's why we love what we do, and we do it for a MetroCard.
That's right.
But is there ever a temptation when you do one performance in front of one audience and you think, wait a minute, I know that this works. What I'm doing works, and they're not getting it, so I should do it bigger, or I should do it.
That's a trap, right?
Yeah.
Not no.
You can't.
Well, and also that's just repetition, which is different.
Yeah.
Unless you're sort of, I don't know, I think maybe, it's a strange thing, maybe I've been blessed to play some roles that you have to go out there and do, and you won't be so well received with love. Like if you're in their face. You must, like when I was in Passing Strange and I had to play this crazy performance artist who had to go downstage center, and I'm choking myself with a microphone cord. And I knew that's something that people were shocked and horrified. I'm not going to get I have to be in this place of telling this story right now, and it's not about getting love. It's not about getting anyone applauding. It's not about anyone. But it's like, if I'm telling this story and I'm very clear about what I'm telling, I've done my job.
That's right.
And, so I have to go out there with that sort of confidence. And I think roles like that have taught me to have a bit more confidence instead of
absolutely
going out there and just like raw.
Needing
anything.
the love and
needing
the acceptance of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
I'm more used to an audience being silent these days. Be silent or look confused or look crazy.
I've had people cross the street when I get out.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
And at first I was like, I was hurt. I was like, I just really
people can't talk to
busted
you
my
after the show.
butt.
And you're like, okay, but actually,
no, they were cross.
Yeah, right.
They didn't want. They were like
anything to do with you, right?
They were like,
It's interesting because bringing up Evo, something that I've experienced too that he's let me do is he's let me play these iconic roles like Blanche, but the most anger I've received was Regina. People are still very angry, like when I the wall, and just removing the Southern accents alone enraged people. It really, I had a lot of patrons of the workshop were very, very hostile about what we made of Regina, because it is this American iconic Bette Davis Southern Belle thing. Same with Blanche, this thing that we decided to treat as a new play instead, and that's a very interesting experience when the audience, because I too have had has not been receptive or been very disturbed, but to be actively angry at me has been really really interesting and
bit freeing.
ultimately
And
very
he was a
liberating.
creative artist
You
as
said
well, right?
empowering.
Exactly, and ultimately very liberating. And I think, you know, as we all know at this table, the bad guys, the strangers, the freaks, the fringes, are beautiful to play. There's great joy in that. Great.
And I just think that the gift in that as well is how it really does challenge you to even be more grounded and convicted and so specific in everything that you do, because you're so challenged, you know, with like you may get anger, or you know, and they're attacking you not just as a, you know, the actor on stage, but as the creative artist, the person who's created this and been a part of this experience.
It's so true.
And so so it's like, okay, well, I have to be even more really committed and find out who I am truly
And then
what
you
I
say,
believe in.
bless you,
Yeah.
because
Thank you for the gift.
2011 and you're enraged.
Yes.
Your blood is boiling right on.
Yes, you are. Yes.
By a theater piece.
yes.
We've done our job.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I want to touch on directors, because I'm fascinated by the collaboration that you talked about. I just wonder if anybody else had a formative experience with a director who did for you the kind of thing that Ivo did for you, or do you take care of yourself?
I would have to,
Not in that way.
Philip. A lot of the plays that I've done in that way, they've been directed by Philip Seymour Hoffman, and I think. What he translates as an actor, he also brings as a director, and so it really has raised my game of commitment, of not looking at what we talked about, not looking at myself, not about looking good, about being real and being truthful, in a very strong and passionate way, you know, and I think that has helped me a lot as an artist. So I have to really, you know, look at him as somebody that has kind of, you know. Shaped me into how I approach the work, without judgment, without, you know, thinking how I'm going to look in this role, and just finding the truth and the passion in it. Because when you're working with Philip, it's not work. It's life, you know. So it becomes kind of like it's the most important thing at that moment, and that really is inspiring for me.
Have you ever directed him?
No, I never have.
Maybe
I'd like to.
That's part of the labyrinth, the theater.
Yeah. It's probably still a long way. Labyrinth has a long way to go, so we'll see.
Michele, any?
You know, it's funny. I mean, I've been really blessed to work with some amazing directors. That's for me now, especially as I've gotten older. We talked about it earlier. Is it worth leaving my house? So I look at like that group of people in a room, and I think, yeah, that's going to jazz me. I play tennis. If you play tennis and you play tennis with somebody who's better than you are, you play better. You know what I mean? Right. So I look ahead and go, yeah, I'm going to be excited by that. But I look back at, I did this revival of Cabaret, like, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 12, something like that, years ago. And Sam Mendes had done a production of it in London, and then he came over and he and Robbie Marshall kind of recreated it. And I was in this musical, and up until that point in my life, I guess, I sort of had a different idea about what musical theater could be. I didn't really get it. And that was such a gift, especially those actors, Natasha and Ronnie Rifkin and Dennis O'Hare and Alan Cumming. I mean, it was like one after another, and every day. And I remember, still to this day, I'll be in a production of something and I'll remember things that Sam Mendes had said to me 13 years ago and think, yeah, okay. And at the time, I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. Yeah. He's like, oh, don't be afraid to take your day on stage with you. And I was like, what is he talking about? You know? Yeah. And later I was like, oh, yeah.
What does that mean? I saw that line in the interview with you. Don't be afraid to take your day on stage with you.
You are where you are.
Yeah, start from where you
absolutely.
are.
You are where you are. I mean, you have the structure of the play and everybody else, but don't be afraid to bring what it is you got.
Austin Pendleton is a great one that way. He's great that way too.
Yeah, really that was eye-opening for me.
So this is going to sound like a dumb question, but I feel are there parts that you long to play?
Yes.
Why don't I think you'd answer?
Josie Moon for the Misbegotten.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Is it an Evo or is it a somebody else, do you think?
She's
I
up
do
for
not
grabs.
know. I'm open. Open.
Any others?
You know, I've always wanted,
run to see
love the
that.
language of David Mamet. I've always wanted to be involved in one of those, like Glengarry, Glen Ross, American Buffalo. It's just something that just totally relates to me, you know, and so that's something that I would have loved to play. You know, I'd love to play in the future.
It'll be there. Colman, anything that?
There's just a character that I've been offered to do like 4 different times, and for some reason I'm never able to play it because of scheduling. I've always wanted to play Festy in Twelfth Night.
Fantastic.
It's just a role that I think I deeply understand. You know, so I really understand, and so I'm looking for an opportunity in the future to play Festy.
Yeah. I want to play Hamlet too.
Yeah. And the MC in Cabaret,
Yeah.
Oof.
honestly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ooh, these are all things I would love to go see. So if anybody's watching, introduce them and direct
Funds
them.
with
Yeah.
ample
We have a whole
funds.
season.
We've got it right here.
That's Shakespeare.
Exactly.
Could happen. I they're out there. My mind is a blank. I mean, it really is Blanche.
Oh, you
Totally.
Great in that play. You know, just Gertrude.
great. Be my Gertrude.
I would be your Gertrude.
There we go.
Done.
There we go.
Wow, I
the
got
public
warm a
theater.
second.
That I'm totally good for.
This is a question that comes from an interview with one of you, and I thought it'd be an interesting question, which is, how would you characterize your career as an actor?
If one word comes to mind, it's explorative, because I never get what I expect from a job. There's always something more interesting. So I'm always exploring, I'm always discovering new things about myself, about the art. And so, I mean, if there is a word that comes to my mind with that, it has to be that. Other than that, that's a very difficult question to answer.
Someone once said to me that early on that like it's a journey. It's like skiing. You know, you go up and then you come down the hill, and it's not like, you know, it's a constant. You know, the actual skiing is the experience, but the whole life of it requires getting back up on the gondola and the stuff that is not skiing.
Yeah, or walking up the hill.
Walking up the hill for that moment. And I totally didn't know what they were talking about at the time. I feel like, discovery, you said the word discovery, because, I mean, there is no, if there is no crystal ball, there is no plan, there is no you know, the only game that there is, you know, the moment when you're doing your job, when the camera's on or when the lights are up. I mean, and the rest of it is.
Yeah. And in theater, it's different every night. It's
Yeah.
every night, it's different.
And the zeitgeist of all the other things that are going on.
Well, and most of us,
career.
you know, if not at this moment, you're actually making a paycheck. But the rest of it, you know, to be doing it for very little money, the sacrifice that you make to do something like that, I feel like there's not a second of it I want to waste. Not a second of it I want to go by. I'm only going to get so many, and it's going to go. So, God, you know, got to grab that.
Nomadic also, because we're not like in the same family all the time. This is a finite experience. It's going to end. If it's a film, it's going to wrap. If it's a play, it's going to end. Even if it's an infinite run, you know. And we're like, you know, little gypsies.
You have all these little families all over New
true.
York, right?
Yeah.
All over the world, basically.
But that big family's pretty small, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we sit here, we've met maybe once.
There are 12 of us.
It's true. It feels that way, doesn't it? It does.
Yeah. It's interesting, I mean, because you brought up something. It's a thought that I have, because it's every time I see Daphne, we have this experience. In 1996, I was a regional theater actor, and I was, you know, in the Bay Area, and I was doing my first job at the Huntington Theater. And a friend of mine asked me to go with them for the opening night of the first national tour of Rent. And so I went there, and it was fantastic. I was in a dream. I was like, oh my gosh! And all these New York actors were coming up. The cast from Rent was coming. Oh my God! It was amazing. And you know, just looking at extended families, you never know where things will go. And so I ended up at someone's hotel room, and everyone had bottles of champagne, and everyone was, and I was thinking about moving to New York in the future. And I was sitting on the floor with this really beautiful, vivacious woman who I know played Mimi on Broadway. And she says to me, we had this conversation. It was very brief, but I said, I definitely want to move to New York someday. And she looked at me and she put her finger in her mouth and did this, and she put a cross on my head, and she said, "You're blessed. It'll happen." And then she kissed me on the head, and that was Daphne. In 1986.
What a gift that was.
So it's amazing. You never know, how, especially in this business, and all these little families you've had, and this experience we had in Boston, and one crazy night, and now here we are sitting. It's just amazing.
It is amazing.
The community that we have here, and it's kind of beautiful.
Well, I think I have to say we have to wrap up now, but I think that you are 5 inspiring people, and I felt honored to have sat here and had this conversation with you. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
These programs are brought to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York in partnership with our friends at CUNY TV. On behalf of the American Theater Wing, I'm Ted Chapin, and thanks for joining us for another edition of Working in the Theater. I'm Ted Chapin, chairman of the American Theater Wing. The Wing has played a vital role in New York's theatrical life for more than 60 years. Best known for creating the Tony Awards, we stand for excellence, but we also support education in the theater, and our work reaches beyond Broadway in New York. The Working in the Theater television programs, which are supported by the Annenberg Foundation and the Dorothy Strelsin Foundation, are unequaled forums for discussions with today's most creative artists. Downstage Center's in-depth radio interviews were created in conjunction with XM Satellite Radio and can be heard on our website. For people who are starting their careers, we have a 2-week boot camp for aspiring actors from colleges across the country called Springboard NYC. And our theater intern group provides a forum for young people who are starting their careers to build a professional network. All of the American Theater Wing's educational and media programs are available for free on demand from our website, americantheaterwing.org. Thanks for your interest in the Wing, and thanks for watching.